Rainbow Magic, The Night Fairies. Sabrina the Sweet Dream Fairies by Daisy Meadows. The Night Fairies' special magic powers bring harmony to the nighttime hours. But now their magic belongs to me, and I'll cause Charles you shall see. In sunset, moonlight, and starlight too, there'll be no more sweet dreams for you. From evening dusk to morning light, I am the master of the night. Contents. A nasty nightmare in the starry glade. Ice castle mission. Night monsters. Sleepy Jack Frost. Sweet dreams. Nightmares. Oh, isn't it sad that this is our last night at Camp Stargaze, Kirsty? Rachel sighed as she snuggled down inside her sleeping bag. She glanced up at the black sky overhead, where tiny silver stars were glittering like diamonds. Still, having an outdoor sleepover is a wonderful way to end our vacation together. Kirsty nodded as she unzipped her own sleeping bag and climbed in. It's been fun, hasn't it, Rachel? She agreed. I'm so glad we came. And the girls and their parents were spending a week of summer vacation at Camp Stargaze, which got its name because it was in a wonderful place to view the night sky. It was warm, clear. It was warm, clear evening, and all the children had brought their sleeping bags onto the grassy area by the tents. They had milk and cookies, and Peter, the camp counselor, had read them a bedtime story. Okay, time to turn off your lights now, Peter called. Good night, everyone. I want to come back to Camp Stargaze again next year, said Lucas. He and Matt, two of Rachel and Kirsty's new friends, were lying on the lawn in their sleeping bags near the girls. It's the best vacation I've ever had. I learned a lot about the stars from Professor Hetty, Matt declared, turning off his flashlight, and I'm going to keep reading about them when I get home. All the flashlights too. Good night, Rachel and Kirsty. Good night, the girls called. All the flashlights were turned off now, and the camp was in darkness, except for the pale light of the moon. Gradually, everything fell silent, other than the occasional gentle hooting of an owl in the whispering woods nearby. Nobody else knows that this has been an extra magical vacation for us, Kirsty, Rachel whispered, smiling at her friend in the moonlight. Yes, we've had some amazing fairy adventures, Kirsty whispered back. After the girls had arrived at Camp Stargaze earlier that week, their fairy friends had asked them to help once more. Rachel and Kirsty had been horrified to learn that Jack Frost and his goblins had stolen 7 satin bags of magic dust from the night fairies while the fairies were at an outdoor party. The night fairies used their magic to make sure that the hours between sunset and sunrise were peaceful and harmonious, just as they should be, but with the magic bags in the hands of Jack Frost and the goblins, all kinds of strange things have been happening, including a green sunset and stars moving around in the sky. I know we found 6 of the bags, Rachel said, but there's still one fairy left to help. Sabrina the Sweet Dreams Fairy. Rachel and Kirsty and the night fairies have been determined to find the bags of magic stardust. To find the bags of magic dust after Jack Frost's icy magic had sent his goblins spinning into the human world to hide the bags. There so far, the girls and the fairies had outwitted the goblins over and over again. They had retrieved almost all the bags. Let's hope we can find Sabrina's bag tomorrow before we go home, Kirsty said with a yawn. Good night, Rachel. Good night, Kirsty, Rachel replied. A few minutes later, Kirsty heard her friend breathing deeply and knew she was asleep. Kirsty cuddled down in her sleeping bag, feeling comfortable, warm, and drowsy. She gazed up at the sky, but suddenly she noticed that the light of the moon had vanished for a moment. Kirsty thought the moon had slipped behind a cloud, but then it reappeared for a second or two before disappearing again. It was almost like magic was flipping a switch. It was almost like someone was flipping a switch and turning the moon off and on. Kirsty thought, feeling confused. Then she saw that the stars were moving. They were zooming around the night sky, mixing up all the constellations. It made Kirsty dizzy just watching them. Suddenly, Kirsty heard a cold, icy chuckle. It sounded so close that it sent a shiver down her spine. Ha ha ha, those silly girls and their pesky fairy friends are no match for me all this time. Jack Frost gloated. I have all the night fairies' magic bags, and now I am the master of the nighttime hours. Hooray for Jack Frost! The goblins cheered. No, Kirsty gasped. This can't be happening. Suddenly, Kirsty shook herself awake. She had broken out in a cold sweat and was tangled up in her sleeping bag. Oh, I was dreaming, Kirsty sighed with relief. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep. What a terrible nightmare. She glanced at Rachel and was surprised to see her friend sitting up, yawning and pushing her hair out of her eyes. Are you okay, Kirsty? Rachel asked. I just had an awful dream about Jack Frost and the goblins. In the starry glade. Oh, so did I, Kirsty explained, and she quickly told Rachel about her dream. My nightmare was that Jack Frost kidnapped all the night fairies and locked them in his ice castle, Rachel said with a sigh. It seems so real. I think it might be Sabrina, because Sabrina, the Sweet Dreams Fairies' bag of magic that is missing, Kirsty pointed out. Should we go to the snack tent and make some hot chocolate? It might help us sleep. Great idea, Rachel agreed. The girls slipped silently out of their sleeping bags, trying not to wake the other kids who seemed to be sound asleep. Then they tiptoed across the camp to the snack tent. Rachel grabbed 2 mugs and Kirsty spooned some chocolate powder into them. As the girls went over to the hot water thermos, Lucas's mom stepped into the tent. She was carrying Lucas's younger sister, Lizzie, who was sobbing loudly. Oh, poor Lizzie, Kirsty said. What's wrong? I'm not sure, Lucas's mom replied, giving Lizzie a comforting hug. I think she must have had a nightmare. She woke up crying and talking about greenies, whatever they are. Kirsty and Rachel glanced at each other as Lucas's mom went to get Lizzie some warm milk. Greenies? Rachel repeated. Do you think Lizzie was dreaming about goblins, Kirsty? It sounds like it, Kirsty replied, frowning as she added hot water to their mugs. There are a lot of bad dreams around tonight, aren't there, Rachel? Like you said before, this must be because Sabrina's bag is missing, Rachel said. The girls took their mugs of hot chocolate and sat on a bench outside the snack tent under the stars. Look, Rachel, Kirsty said after taking her first sip of hot chocolate. Here comes your dad. Rachel glanced across the camp and saw her father. He just come out of the tent the Walkers and Tates were sharing, and now he was wandering towards the girls. But as he got closer, Rachel and Kirsty could see that something was wrong. Rachel's dad didn't seem to have noticed the girls, even though he was staring straight at them. He looked kind of dazed and upset. "What's the matter with him?" Rachel asked, feeling worried. "Kirsty, do you think he's sleepwalking?" Before Kirsty could reply, Mr. Walker stopped her boot. He blinked a few times and shook his head as if he were trying to clear it. Then he noticed Rachel and Kirsty staring at him. "Oh, hello, girls," Mr. Walker said, rubbing his eyes. He glanced down at his pajamas, looking confused. "What am I doing out here?" he asked. "I think you're sleepwalking, Dad," Rachel told him. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Rachel's dad reassured her. "But I was having a very strange nightmare. I dreamed that I was surrounded by little green creatures with long noses and big feet. Then I heard cackles of icy laughter. And I felt very cold." He shivered. Rachel and Kirsty exchanged glances. "Well, I'll better get back to bed," Mr. Walker said with a yawn. "And you should too. We've got a long day ahead of us tomorrow. Good night, girls. I just hope I don't have any more nightmares." "Good night," Rachel and Kirsty replied as Mr. Walker went back into the tent. Then they turned to each other, eyes wide. "Jack Frost and the goblins are getting into people's dreams," Kirsty gasped. "What are we going to do, Rachel?" "I don't want to go." I don't know," Rachel sighed. "I guess we should wait for the magic to come to us. But I don't want to fall asleep again in case I have another goblin nightmare." The girls finished their hot chocolate, washed the mugs, and then tiptoed back across the camp. But before they reached their sleeping bags, Kirsty stopped dead, clutching Rachel's arm. "Look, Rachel," she whispered. "See that light in the Whispering Woods?" Rachel stared through the darkness, and then she saw it. A tiny, dazzling light was floating through the woods, weaving its way between the trees. "Do you think it could be Sabrina?" Rachel asked. Excitement flooded through her. "Let's go and see," Rachel said Kirsty. The girls quietly left the camp and slipped into the Whispering Woods, keeping their eyes fixed on the bright light flitting around in the distance. It wandered here and there, not seeming to be headed anywhere in particular. "I wonder where it's going," said Rachel. Suddenly, the light dipped down to the ground, out of sight. "I think it landed in the starry glade," Rachel gasped. "Come on, Kirsty." The starry glade was a clearing in the Whispering Woods, covered with white, sweet-scented star-shaped flowers. Rachel and Kirsty dashed into the clearing and saw that the light had settled on a springy cushion of green moss. "Kirsty, it is Sabrina," Rachel explained in a low voice as they tiptoed closer. Sabrina, the Sweet Dreams Fairy, was fast asleep on a bed of moss among the starry flowers. She didn't even open her eyes at the girls bent over her. "I wonder why Sabrina didn't come to find us," Kirsty whispered. Rachel frowned. "You know how my dad was sleepwalking," she reminded Kirsty. "Well, I think Sabrina might have been sleep flying. She was wandering all over the Whispering Woods, and she didn't seem to know where she was going." Then Sabrina stirred a little. "Help!" she muttered in her sleep. "Help me!" Rachel and Kirsty glanced anxiously at each other. "Even Sabrina having a bad dream," Kirsty said. "We better wake her up, Rachel." Ice Castle Mission. "Sabrina," Rachel called gently. "Wake up! You're having a nightmare." For a moment, Sabrina didn't move. Then she slowly opened her eyes and stared up at Rachel and Kirsty. Oh, girls, I'm so glad to see you, Sabrina said shakily. She sat up, pushing her silky brown hair out of her face. I was dreaming that Jack Frost had captured me and locked me in a cage made of ice. Lots of people are having nightmares about Jack Frost and the goblins, including me and Rachel, Kirsty told her, sighing. Jack Frost is using my bag of magic dust to give us all bad dreams, Sabrina exclaimed, looking very upset. She fluttered off her cushion of moss, smoothing down her purple ruffled skirt. Indeed, the Moonstone's fairy taught me how to use my dream magic, but now it's all gone wrong. I have to get my bag back so I can make sure everyone has good dreams. Is the bag somewhere around here in the Whispering Woods? Rachel asked eagerly. Sabrina shook her head. No, Jack Frost was so angry when the goblins lost the other 6 bags that he took the 7th bag back. He took the 7th bag to his ice castle, she explained, and now he's guarding it himself. Rachel and Kirsty glanced at each other in dismay. Girls, will you come to Fairyland with me and help me get my bag of magic dream dust back? Sabrina asked. You know that time will stand still here in the human world while you're away. Of course we'll come, said Kirsty. Rachel and I don't want to have any more awful goblin nightmares either. Sabrina lifted her wand, and a puff of sparkling fairy dust whirled around the girls. Once again, Rachel and Kirsty felt the familiar rush of excitement as they shrank down and became fairies with their own glittering wings on their backs. Then, with another flick of Sabrina's wand, they zoomed off to Fairyland in a swirl of rainbow-colored magic. It was nighttime in Fairyland when Sabrina and the girls arrived. Sabrina swooped through an open window in the Fairyland Palace and into the throne room. Rachel and Kirsty were surprised behind her. Rachel and Kirsty were right behind her. To the girls' surprise, King Auburn and Queen Titania were awake and pacing up and down the room. King Auburn wore a magnificent purple robe, while the Queen was dressed in a white silk nightgown. The other 6 night fairies were there too, all looking anxious. Oh, girls, thank goodness you found Sabrina and woke her up, Queen Titania explained, rushing over to hug them. We have to get the bag of magic dream dust back. The king and I can't sleep because we're having the most terrible nightmares about Jack Frost and the goblins. Yes, I dreamed that Jack Frost stole my golden crown and wouldn't give it back, King Auburn said with a sigh. I had a horrible dream that Jack Frost became king of Fairyland and the goblins were running around the palace gardens, pulling the heads off the roses and paddling in the singing pool, the Queen told the girls. And look out there, the king pointed out the window at the toadstool houses surrounding the castle. Some of them were lit up by a bright firefly light. As the girls and the fairies watched, more and more lights began to come on in their houses. It looks like all of Fairyland had woken up from bad dreams, Sabrina said sadly, but Rachel and Kirsty have agreed to come to Jack Frost's ice castle with me to try and get the bag back. The king and queen, and the 6 night fairies looked relieved. You both come to our rescue once again, girls, said Queen Titania gratefully. Thank you so much. And the other night fairies will do their best to make sure nothing else goes wrong here or in the human world before morning, the king added. Take care, all of you. So quickly, Sabrina, Rachel, and Kirsty flutter out of the palace window. Then they headed across fairyland to Jack Frost's ice castle. The girls had been to the ice castle before, but as they fluttered through the darkness towards it, it was still a cold, scary sight. The castle was built of sheets of ice with 6 tall, frosty towers. It glittered and gleamed like a marble in the pale moonlight. As Sabrina led the girls towards the castle wall, they heard gruff goblins' voices. Immediately, Sabrina put a finger to her lips. There was a group of goblins standing on the castle battlements, taking to one another. Sabrina, Rachel, and Kirsty floated down a little lower so they could listen. I'm tired, one of the goblins complained with an enormous yawn. I want to go to bed, Jack Frost. Jack Frost said we have to guard the castle against fairies and those human girls, another goblin reminded him. Rachel and Kirsty glanced at each other. They could see goblin guards on all the entrances into the castle. How were they going to get past the goblins and slip inside? Suddenly, one of the goblin guards happened to glance upwards. He spotted Sabrina and the girls. They could duck out of sight, and he gave a shriek of anger. Look, he yelled, pesky fairies! Night monsters! All the goblins howled with rage and rushed towards Sabrina and the girls. The 3 friends quickly flew up and out of reach. Then Sabrina began to sing in a sweet voice. When the sun has set at last, when the sky is darkening fast, when the moon is pale and light, when the silvery stars are bright, that's the time to rest your head and climb into your cozy bed and sleep and dream the night away. Tomorrow is another day. As Sabrina sang her lullaby, the goblins stood staring up at her. Then they all began to yawn and rub their eyes. Rachel and Kirsty watched with a smile as the goblins began to sink down onto the ground, curling themselves up into balls as they fell fast asleep. Your magic lullaby worked, Sabrina, Rachel whispered as she and Kirsty flew down to join the fairy. Not quite, Sabrina said with a frown. She pointed at one of the goblins who had stuck his fingers in his ears so that he couldn't hear the lullaby. I'm not listening, he chanted, running towards them. Quick, girls, into the castle, Sabrina cried. The nearest entrance and inside the castle. Stop, the goblin shouted, chasing them. Where's Jack Frost? Rachel asked as they flew down an icy hallway. Sabrina frowned. I don't know, she replied. Let's try the throne room, Sabrina. Rachel and Kirsty zoomed to the throne room and peeked inside, but Jack Frost's icy throne was empty. The goblin was still right behind them, so they kept flying. Stop, the goblin! Stop! The goblin yelled again, leaping forward. He tried to grab Sabrina. Luckily, he missed. Maybe Jack Frost's in bed, Kirsty suggested. After all, it is nighttime, but the ice castle is huge, Rachel groaned as they turned another corner. The goblin followed them, panting loudly. His bedroom could be anywhere. Suddenly, the goblin skidded to a halt on the icy floor. I'm going to tell Jack Frost that you're here, he announced. Then you'll be in big trouble. He turned and scurried up a winding staircase of ice in one of the tall towers. What luck, Sabrina whispered with a wide grin. The goblin's going to lead us straight to Jack Frost. Follow him, girls, but keep out of sight. Rachel, Kirsty, and Sabrina flew up the staircase after the goblin, keeping far behind him so he couldn't see them. They peeked around the corner at the top of the stairs and saw the goblin come to a stop. He was at the very top of the tower in front of a closed door. Look at the sign on the door, Sabrina whispered. I think we found Jack Frost. Rachel and Kirsty stared at the sight. It said Jack Frost, private chamber. Knock before entering. The goblin knocked on the door. There was a pause, and then Jack Frost stammered. Come in. Kirsty was surprised. Why does Jack Frost sound so scared? She muttered to Sabrina and Rachel. The goblin went into the room, and Sabrina and the girls flew in behind him. Through the darkness, they could see Jack Frost sitting up in bed, a frightened look on his face. He wore white pajamas with a blue snowflake pattern, and he was holding a blue teddy bear with icy spikes. Spiky fur. A night light was next to him on the bedside table. I came to tell you that there are fairies in the castle, the goblin began, but Jack Frost had already spotted Sabrina, Rachel and Kirsty and the frightened look vanished from his face with a roar of anger. He grabbed his pillow and clutched it tightly. I'm in charge of the nighttime now, Jack Frost declared firmly, and you'll never get the last bag of magic dust. Why aren't you sleeping? Kirsty asked, still wondering why Jack Frost had looked so frightened. The goblin whirled around and glared at her. Jack Frost never sleeps at night. Didn't you know that he snapped? He's scared of the... Jack Frost gave a yelp of rage and threw his teddy bear at the goblin. Get out, he shouted. The goblin scurried out of the bathroom as fast as he could. Why are you so scared? Sabrina asked Jack Frost. Jack Frost frowned. Nighttime's very dangerous, he muttered. There are night monsters everywhere, and they'll get you if you go to sleep. What are night monsters? Kirsty wanted to know. Everywhere, Jack Frost replied. A shutter under the bed, in the closet, in the dresser, even in my slippers. And he pointed down at a pair of icy, curly-toed slippers beside the bed. They keep me awake with bad dreams, and if I have to suffer, Jack Frost scowled. Then I want to ruin nighttime for everyone else too. Sabrina glanced at Rachel and Kirsty. Her eyes were wide. The girls looked back in surprise. I don't believe it, the fairy whispered. Jack Frost is afraid of the dark. Sleepy Jack Frost. There's no such thing as a night monster, Rachel explained to Jack Frost. Look, we'll show you, Sabrina. We'll show you. Sabrina flew across the room and pointed her wand at the closet. The door swung open, showing Jack Frost collections of icy outfits, but there was nothing else to see. Then Kirsty and Rachel flew out over to the dresser, and together they pulled open the drawers one by one. See, Kirsty said, there's nothing in there. What about under the bed, Jack Frost asked suspiciously. Sabrina and the girls linked hands and flew right under the bed from one side to the other. Nothing, Sabrina said, and there aren't any monsters in your slippers. But Jack Frost didn't look convinced. Those night monsters are clever, he grumbled. They can hide anywhere and then pop up when I'm not expecting it. There's one thing I can do to keep the night monsters away, Sabrina told him. What? Jack Frost demanded eagerly. If you give me my bag of magic dream dust, I can sprinkle some around your bedroom and use my fairy magic to make sure you only have good dreams, never bad, Sabrina explained. Then all the night fairies will have their bags back, and nighttime everywhere will be peaceful and quiet, and there'll be nothing to be scared of. What do you think? Jack Frost hissed, clutching his pillow. You could have wonderful dreams, Rachel chimed in. You could dream that you're king of fairyland and that all the fairies are waiting on on you and you, hand and foot, Kirsty added. Jack Frost grinned. Yes, that sounds like fun, he said. Much better than lying awake. Much better than lying awake listening for night monsters. Jack Frost reached inside the pillowcase, pulled out a satin bag of magic dream dust. Sabrina breathed a huge sigh of relief as she flew over and took it from him. Untying straw strings, she took a handful of dust, scattered it around the room as Rachel and Kirsty watched purple sparkles fill the room floating from the ceiling to the floor like a shower of snowflakes. Looking sleepy now, Jack Frost snuggled down under his covers. Sabrina, Rachel, and Kirsty picked up his teddy bear and tucked it in beside him. Thank you, Jack Frost muttered dreamily. A few minutes later, he was sound asleep and snoring so peacefully that Rachel and Kirsty couldn't help each blowing him a good night kiss. We did it, girls, Sabrina whispered happily as Jack Frost snored. Now all the night fairies will be able to do their nighttime work. It's time to go back to Fairyland Palace to celebrate. But first, Sabrina flew to an open window, taking a pinch of shimmering purple dream dust from her bag. She gently blew it onto the breeze. Rachel and Kirsty watched the dream dust shoot out into the night, swirling towards the Fairyland Palace in the distance. Now everyone in Fairyland will know I have my bag back, Sabrina said with a smile, and there won't be any more bad dreams together. Bad dreams anywhere tonight. Thank you for all your help, girls. Now let's go. I think there will be a surprise waiting for us. Sweet dreams. As Sabrina, Kirsty, and Rachel arrived. As Sabrina, Kirsty, and Rachel arrived back at the palace, they heard the sound of clapping and cheering. They floated down into the palace gardens and saw the king and queen and the other night fairies waiting for them. They were sitting on the palace lawn on soft comforts and blankets with pillows to rest their heads on. Welcome to our party under the stars, Queen Titania called to Sabrina and the girls. Welcome to the party under the stars, Queen Titania called to Sabrina and the girls as they fluttered down to join them. They landed on one of the cozy blankets and made themselves comfortable. Well done, King Auburn smiled. Night fairies, if it weren't for all of you, Jack Frost would still be the master of the night. Poor Jack Frost, Sabrina said with a sigh. He only stole the bags because he's scared of the dark. Really? The queen looked amazed. So why did he play all those other tricks, like moving the stars around and turning the sunset green? I think Jack Frost decided he might as well have some fun causing childs with our magic dust, Sabrina replied. But he won't make any more mischief now because he's fast asleep, Kirsty said with a grin. Sabrina gave him lots of sweet dreams. Everyone began to talk and laugh about all the adventures they had trying to get the bag of magic dust back from the goblins. Meanwhile, Ava the Sunset Fairy and Morgan the Midnight Fairy began handing out plates of star-shaped cookies and mugs of hot chocolate with whipped cream. The girls had a wonderful time, but when Rachel spotted the fairies beginning to yawn, and Anna, the moonbeam fairy, curling up on her blanket, to go to sleep, she knew it was time for them to head home. "I think we better go," Rachel told the king and queen. "Thank you so much for inviting us to the party. You're our guest of honor," the king replied with a smile. "We couldn't have found all the bags without your help. And we have a very special thank you gift for you," the queen added. She handed Rachel a small satin midnight blue pillow embroidered with a golden moon. Kirsty's was the same, except that hers had a pattern of silver stars. "The pillows are filled with a pinch of magic dust from each of the night fairies," the queen explained as the girls stared at the pillows with delight. "Now, nighttime will always be beautiful and peaceful for you both." "Thank you," Rachel and Kirsty said as the king and queen raised their wands. Instantly, a shower of colorful sparkles swirled around the girls as they waved goodbye to their fairy friends. A few seconds later, the girls found that they were back to their human size and standing at the edge of the whispering woods. The pale moonlight owls hooted softly, and Rachel and Kirsty tiptoed through camp stargaze. "It looks like everyone's sleeping soundly now," Kirsty whispered with a satisfaction. She slipped into her sleeping bag and then pulled her head down on the pillow. The queen gave the pillow the queen had given her. Rachel did the same. "Sweet dreams, Kirsty," Rachel said with a smile. "Sweet dreams, Rachel," Kirsty replied, winking at her friend. And in a moment or two, both girls were fast asleep, dreaming of their magical adventures with their friends, the night fairies. Bye-bye, and see you next time.